Welcome to the Northern Michigan Update. I'm Senator Jason Allen, and today we have Mark Breederland from the Michigan Cooperative Extension Service, and you're part of the Sea Grant program. And today we're going to be learning about invasive species, the water quality of our Great Lakes, and how the health is of our Great Lakes. Mark, we appreciate you being here today, and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Senator.
Tell me a little bit about Sea Grant. Now, we know that this started kind of back in the Milliken administration, Nixon time. Is that sort of when the history was?
Yeah, actually, the Sea Grant program is a university, federal, and state partnership that focuses on the Great Lakes and the oceans of our country. And it's actually federal legislation passed in the mid-1960s.
Okay.
And Michigan was one of the first programs to join in. And actually, it's a joint partnership between the University of Michigan and Michigan State University. We're now married, and we do research and education and outreach on Great Lakes topics, a whole spectrum of them, of which we spend a lot of time on this aquatic invasive species issue.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the topics that you're working on, so for our listeners to take a look at the breadth. And I'm always impressed with what's going on at Cooperative Extension, too.
Yeah, thanks. We're working with waterfront communities on dredging issues as low lake level issues, best practices at the shoreline, questions on fisheries, fisheries health. We're working on observing systems in the Great Lake, kind of high-tech weather and real practical observing systems on the Great Lakes. And unfortunately, one of our biggest challenges still is these aquatic invasive species that have become part of North America and the Great Lakes in particular.
It's just really, it's amazing. You know, when I grew up in Traverse City and fished when I was in Boy Scouts, and they always watched the alewives, and then learned a little bit about the sea lamprey. And since historically, because of the ocean going, and if you can go in and tell us how this exotic species, how do they come to be?
Sure. Well, the invasive species, we've had different exotics maybe been intentionally introduced, but we talk about invasives that really take over a part of an ecosystem. And one of our biggest ones that came in and that so devastated our Great Lakes was obviously the sea lamprey. These may have come in as far as Lake Ontario, but there's a pretty large barrier called Niagara Falls. And in when the Welland Canal was built in the 20s and 30s, and then all of a sudden sea lamprey could swim right into Lake Erie, and they decimated this natural fishery with the lake trout as kind of the king of the jungle at the time, and they just wiped it out. In fact, both the U.S. and Canadian government in 1955 formed a treaty to say, what are we going to do about this lake trout? It's decimated this huge industry. And so they formed the Great Lakes Fishery Commission and did some incredible research and found a way that we could actually manage sea lamprey. So if your viewers aren't familiar, this is a model of a life-size sea lamprey. And they swim up the streams and spawn, and they found a chemical that pretty much just kills the lamprey as they emerge from the mud. And we've been treating that and successfully managing that one invasive species since the early 60s, and but it costs us probably $25 to $30 million annually for that. But it protects a $3 billion fishery.
Talk a little bit about the Michigan fisheries. Now, the biodiversity, the types of different fish that are in the Great Lakes. What is you talk about the lake trout, and then what else? What are the other types of fish that?
Well, there's all kinds of wonderful fisheries that are native. We intentionally introduced the Pacific salmon in the 60s to help solve the alewife problem. Some species that are not native to the Great Lakes are really a key part of our food web now, like the smelt. A lot of people enjoy eating smelt and even ice fishing for smelt at times.
Where did smelt come from?
Smelt were actually brought in from Europe and started in Crystal Lake in Benzie County, Michigan. And then they accidentally escaped as folks in the early 1900s were trying to connect Crystal Lake directly into Lake Michigan. And they've become a permanent part of our Great Lakes since. And they're a huge part of our food web for the salmon and a lot of other species that would eat that
Do they
fish.
compete against like perch and those types of things?
They're pretty well kind of have different niches in there. But the Great Lakes have just a tremendous fishery. The connections up the rivers like the Boardman River or the St. Mary's connecting river between the two Great Lakes, those are just incredible diverse areas for fisheries, but also places where these wonderful fish.
Okay, so we theoretically talk about their life cycle because they came in from the ocean.
Yes.
And then they've been able to adapt to fresh water.
That's right. They love the fresh water, and they do very well. They grow a little bit larger than, maybe 18 inches. And again, each one of the sea lamprey can attach and would actually hang onto the side of a larger fish, and kind of they have sucking, rasping mouth parts, and then they attach, hold on to the fish till eventually they kill the host fish, and then they'll swim off and find another one. So each fish can kill up to, each one of the sea lamprey fish can kill up to 40 pounds of fish in the Great Lakes.
What's the typical lifespan of one of these guys?
I think they have a complex life cycle. I'm trying to think it's somewhere around 3 to 4 years, and they're latent in the mud in the streams for a couple of years of that cycle.
Okay, and then what is the largest you've seen of these?
Oh, they're probably, the maximum size would be less than 2 feet.
Okay.
But again, it's the devastating impact that each one, and the females need them, a little bit like mosquitoes, where they need that kind of blood and part of the body fluids from the other fish that they kill for as far as their reproductive life cycle. So anyways, but the good news is, out of all the invasive species in the Great Lakes, we've been managing the sea lamprey problem because of the development of TFM and the other chemicals that are applied. Right now they're working on pheromone research. They have a credible sense of smell, and they might be able to trap and capture some of the lamprey using just this a little bit of pheromone, a smell in the water. So it's neat research. But unfortunately, for that success story, that's very costly for us. There's many other challenges across the Great Lakes.
Now, I worked with Ken Sikkema, who was our majority leader and was very active back when Senator North, Senator McManus were in the legislature, Senator George McManus, about ballast water and the quality of the Great Lakes. We have gotten a host of invasive species. Some probably don't even know what's in the water at this point in time. Kind of go through those different animals. Species.
Sure. Well, there's a whole series of them, and you mentioned ballast water, and unfortunately, the ballast is kind of our key pathway. There's many pathways that talked about the canal and the lamprey is able to swim up the Welland Canal into the Great Lakes, but the ballast water in the freighters that's coming thin from Europe, most of our invasive species, zebra mussel, the Eurasian rough fish, the round goby, some other species of plants, and even viruses, they're almost all concerned that the scientists have been kind of in agreement that they've all entered via ballast water. And it's a very complex issue, and people are very open, I think, to working with the shipping industry and stuff, but it's still, that is the pathway. Most recently, just in November 2006, first new invasive, it's a little bloody red shrimp. Hemimysis anomala. It was discovered in Lake Michigan. First time ever. But again, there was a research paper back in 1999, and they said these were probable species that could come into the Great Lakes. And here, lo and behold, we find it in 2006 down in Muskegon, Michigan. And they're concerned that that'll be another impactor to the whole food web of Lake Michigan and all the Great Lakes. It's a little bloody red shrimp. Okay,
so let's go through sort of your hierarchy, if there is one. I mean, we are very concerned about every exotic species. What are the most damaging ones?
Well, you know, the species that have come in and that are actually invasive and tend to take over an ecosystem, you know, we have plants, we have animals, fish, and invertebrates. And you know, there's no question that most everybody knows our zebra mussel and its cousin, the quagga mussel, which
the zebra mussel we've all stepped on.
The zebra mussels are definitely, they come up on the shores at times and stuff. They're really an incredible creature. Their filtering capacity is phenomenal. And they have changed the whole food web because of the amount of water they filter. They actually take in the water and some of the phytoplankton that they like, and then they spit out the bad stuff, and they also have a feces that's kind of concentrated on the bottom. So a lot of the energy that used to be in the water column of the Great Lakes is now kind of on the bottom, and they've increased the clarity of the Great Lakes. So if you're a diver, for instance, the clarity of a Grand Traverse Bay, Little Traverse Bay, or, you know, all those areas is incredible as far as sight now, and it's changed some of the fish. The sight feeders are kind of liking it, and maybe some of the walleye and other fish that don't like that clear water don't like it as much. But things have changed, so, you know, zebra mussels have unquestionably and will continue to have an incredible impact on our food web.